This is a seismic moment for baseball labor, and the timing is the whole story. So let us know in the comments how surprised you were with the Tony Clark news. Parker, I'm sure yesterday morning you were like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, so Tony Clark leaving the MLBPA is kind of something that we've seen coming for a little bit now. Jeff Passan did a really good hit on the Rich Eisen show today that I watched, or maybe it was yesterday. Either way, Jeff Passan went into detail about how it's the Eastern District of New York that is investigating impropriety, both financial and personal, from Tony Clark that has led to his resignation from the executive director position at the MLBPA, which is like terrible. They're investigating a whole bunch of things that the MLBPA have done that have been like basically unanimously agreed on as good, like their youth sports program and things like that, that they think may be tied into how Tony Clark was misappropriating funds and things like that. It's all just pretty terrible. But the worst part about it from a Major League Baseball fan's perspective is definitely how much it affects 2027 and the collective bargaining agreement that needs to be struck in order for baseball to even be played next season, and the lockout that's looming in December 1st. All of these things like are right on the horizon, right when you need the most unified front as a players association. Tony Clark steps down. And it took like 48 hours for the PA to even recover and elect a replacement. And we'll get into the replacement in a second. But yeah, definitely Tony Clark leaving. I mean, it was I can't say it wasn't on my bingo card because it was always a possibility. And if it was going to happen, personally, I think it might be the best time for it to happen.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. We're going to talk about the timing of this, which I think is everything. And before we do that, let's kind of figure out what we know right now. So we know that, as you said, Tony Clark resigned out of nowhere. But it seems like it is the result of late last week through that one team partners federal investigation. They discovered that Tony Clark had a inappropriate relationship with an employee that worked at MLBPA who was also his sister-in-law. Okay.
Yeah.
What? That was my first reaction. I was like, what kind of drama are we living in right now? And all of that led to his eventual resignation yesterday. And I don't like the timing of this. Like, I guess I want to start with the timing of this before we get into the replacement, because the timing, Parker, I go back and forth. I don't know that it matters. I mean, they weren't even starting conversations until April for the collective bargaining agreement. And so I don't know that he was a fan favorite. I don't know that he was a player's favorite. Those that are actually on the executive committee in the union, there's been grumblings about them not being thrilled with Tony Clark. And I don't know that this puts them in a worse position. I probably argue puts them in a better position, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, so I mean, there was rumblings during the last CBA negotiation in 2021 about how there was some displeasure with the way that it was handled by both Tony Clark and the owners. I want to say the owners association. That's not a thing because MLB is the owners association. And their elected representative is Rob Manfred. And Rob Manfred famously got his job as the commissioner of baseball because he was a huge baseball fan. And he's also a big labor negotiator before his time with MLB. So this all ties into the replacement that was elected, which the replacement was elected as you're listening to this past morning, right? I believe is the day. Yeah. Anyway, It was within the last 24 hours. Bruce Meyer, who was already, first of all, the second in command at the MLBPA, and also the primary negotiator for the MLBPA. So to me, the way that this reads, and this is all conjecture, is the players finally were like, okay, Tony, it's time to go. You've got to go before the negotiations start. And Bruce is the guy that we're going to put in the position to not only negotiate the entire deal, but also be the guy with the final approval on the deal. And there's a board process and stuff like that. And there's player representatives and former player representatives and stuff that will be involved in that process. But I think personally that why I say that this is the perfect timing for it is if it obviously would have been perfect, like 6 months after the last CBA, that would have been the best time to get new leadership in the seat. But if it was going to happen now or never kind of thing, either that or you lock in with Tony Clark for one more negotiation and then get him out of here, and him and Manfred's times at the heads of the table both come to end at the same time. This is I don't know. Bruce Meyer is the guy that was already going to be negotiating, like I said. And so one thing I wanted to ask you leading into this is, does the turnover from Tony Clark to Bruce Meyer, do you think that weakens the leadership, or do you think it strengthens it? And just kind of like, where do you think it puts the PA going into negotiation time in April?
I think people are really blowing this up to be something that it's not. I don't know that it truly shakes anything up or changes things dramatically. Because like you said, Bruce Meyer is their lead negotiator. He's been on the
Yeah.
case for a while with the MLBPA. He's going to just pick up right where things left off, and come April, he's going to be having the same conversations he was having if Tony Clark was around. Like, I think people, when you look at the way Bruce Meyer and Tony Clark operate under the MLBPA as I've come to know it, is Tony Clark is the figurehead. He's the PR guy.
Yeah.
He is out. He's at the events. He's the one you see. Don't discredit all the work that Bruce Myers and others are doing behind the scenes. Like, he is an attorney. He's got a background in this stuff. He came from the NHL Player Association. Like, this is just a guy he knows his stuff, right? So I think people are like, oh, the MLBPA is in shambles. What are they going to do? This is terrible for their position. I don't think it matters. The guy's still the guy, and the issues that are in front of them for this negotiation are still the same issues. Okay, that's not changing. So I guess I'll kick it back to you and I'll ask you this. Let's just take a moment to really kind of dive into the issues that are still in front of the players here, and why I think they are sensitive more than ever about who's leading them and what the structure of the Players Association looks like going forward, because this collective bargaining agreement is going to be the most consequential in the history of the sport by far, no matter how it falls. And a lot of that has to do with the revenue sharing, the competitive balance, and ultimately talks of a salary cap. So let's just throw it out on the table now, Parker, because I need to know your thoughts. Is this salary cap thing, is it even have a chance of happening? Like, what's the realistic chance that this happens in your mind?
I think it's non-zero. I think that there is a chance that this happens, but and that's the thing. That's what seems so nasty about this whole situation going in, is that the players are staunchly against a salary cap, which understandably so. It means their salaries will get lower, but on average, like the median salary in MLB will be lower as a result of a salary cap implementation. Now, the one thing that's the kind of a carrot instead of a stick that the owners have in their pocket is they also could propose a salary floor. Now, or it could just be something that the players counter with, because that could just kind of squeeze everything together. And that's the ideal scenario, maybe. If anything is going to happen, then the lower paid players should be getting paid more, and the higher paid players would end up getting paid less. I don't think that bailing out a bunch of billionaires for not wanting to spend money when so many of them are spending less than half of the revenue that their team brings in every year on salary. I think that I don't think cutting them a break is the way to move forward. Every year we have to hear ramblings about how owning an MLB franchise is not profitable, and how it's it's really tough times and the businesses are bad. Ticket prices are higher than they've ever been. Attendance is higher than it's been in decades. If these contracts that keep getting handed out by these owners, like, they're kind of beating their own argument. And then if franchise valuations keep going up, like, come on, we're not dumb enough to think that you think that the cash that they're making at every given like season end in revenue is the only value they gain by having these teams. They're gaining billions and billions of dollars in value just by holding on to the team. None of these teams are decreasing in value. Every single one of them is increasing. So I think that's kind of a crock. I think that the players know that it is, and they are coming to the table with a litigator and with a negotiator that, famously, Bruce Meyer I'm attributing a bunch of successes to his name that I may not know are exactly his to claim, but I have never once, ever since the NHL's last big lockout where they lost a season, they're now negotiating and getting CBAs negotiated like 6-7 months prior to the actual expiration of the
Hmm.
old one. And if we can get into a situation where that's the case, and if maybe Tony Clark was like the friction between that happening, who knows? Because if this guy can go in and come to the table with clear expectations, give a little, get a little, maybe we find ourselves with the sport of baseball in a healthier place, but it feels like it's got to get worse before it gets better. Like you said, this is going to be a very, very big moment in the history of the sport, and we're going to see it change like we've never seen it before. And what stinks is we're not talking about a pitch clock. We're not talking about ABS. We're not talking about bigger bases. We're not talking about rule changes. We're not even talking about anything that occurs between the white lines that we want to watch every single year. We're just talking about the business side of the game, which is always, when you think about it, the business side of the game is always used as like this brute force bludgeoning argument when we talk about guys getting traded and getting cut from teams and competing for championships. It's always like, it's a business. Well, it's a business. And it sucks because not only has it, turned into this way of explaining why the game is so tough on the players that actually play it, it's also being used against those players to try to determine that they need to be making less money, even though the guys who are saying they need to make less money are the ones paying them. And they're paying them more and more and more and more every single year and signing guys to $700 and $800 million contracts.
I get concerned, and where my real worry comes into play is that we have a lockout that's guaranteed going into the winter. That's at minimum going to happen, but that will extend into losing games in 2027. Why I think that's more likely than last time is because the league is coming into this. When you look at it objectively, and they're asking for a salary cap, this is nothing that they just created out of thin air. Every major sport has a salary cap. They are the last ones to not. So if you objectively look at how sports are run in the United States of America, they all have salary caps. So this is not, on the face of it, a crazy ask. Of course, there's the player side. We understand that. Where I struggle is this concept of money is not a unlimited resource. And what I mean by that is, when you look at the economics of the game, the way that I view it is you pay a player more money. Like, let's just look at how much salaries have increased in the last even 5 years, where you're paying players 40, 45 million AAV. Like,
60.
The laws of economics tells us that there's a 0% chance that stops. We could 5 years from now see players making 65, 70, 75. Like, that is how this works. Now, let's extrapolate that out, Parker. If you're 5 years down the line and these teams are paying that kind of cash, where did they get that cash from? Well, guess what? The way economies and economics of scale work is then you have to raise prices to make up that money. Like, that is eventually going to happen. The bubble will burst. It's a finite resource, guys. So, like, I think that's a real risk for the whole sport, because I'll tell you what, eventually, if you're charging $100 for an upper deck ticket, and I'm being a little hyperbolic, but the principle applies. Like,
I don't know, man. Any game that means anything, it is $100 for a upper deck ticket. Like, think about when you get late September games with pennant races and stuff like that. You're talking about $100, and that's the reason the NFL is able to charge so much as they do. Excuse me, for their tickets, because every game has such big playoff implications.
Sure, and they're playing 8, 9 home games, but like, use whatever number you want, 150, 200. Eventually, the market will demand, and the teams will have the necessity to charge higher prices. And then you start alienating your fan base, and then you have a real issue. So eventually that bubble will burst. So this isn't just a millionaires versus billionaires thing. This is a sustainability of the sport conversation, truly.
Yeah.
And so this is why this is so huge. And this is why I think the chances of a lockout going deep into 2027 or deeper into 27, I put it over a 50% chance because of that fact alone. Is they are going to be hell-bent, they being the owners, on instituting a salary cap. They'll work around that. They'll negotiate. Hey, I'll give you a floor. I'll give you this. I'll give you that, whatever. I don't think this gets done without a salary cap. I just don't.
Yeah, when you look at the group that actually stands, first of all, the group that stands to lose the most, like dollar amount wise, is the owners. But the group that is more susceptible to that loss is the players. And the
Yes.
owners know that they can
Yeah.
just hold out for as long as they need to. And the players,
Yeah.
as long as they're not collecting paychecks, those guys making league minimum are going to feel it. And the union knows they represent way more of those than they do 200, 300, $400 million guys.
Yes. Yes. And I hate to I mean, I hate to say that the league has the leverage, but they have. They always will, as long as that exists. And it
Mm-hmm.
is what it is. I mean, these people have families, people have kids. I wouldn't, if I was in their shoes, I wouldn't want to lose any games, right? Like,
Right.
this is just common sense. So the leverage is real and it's there. So I don't know. I guess more than anything, I think the threat of a lockout is real. I think this whole change from Tony Clark to Bruce Myers, it doesn't increase or decrease those odds. I think people are getting really worked up about this change, thinking the MLBPA is falling apart, and that is not even part of the discussion. Things will keep going.
Yeah.
Discussions will continue to be had, and it is not changing what's going to happen 6 months from now.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, getting a salary cap may actually just be gearing up for the future. I mean, we have seen salary caps are not set in stone. We're not going to say it's $100 million. We're not going to say it's $50 to $100 million and it never changes. Like the NFL salary cap doubles every 5 to 10 years. Like it's just how it is. That's how this thing works, and it's going to get higher. It's going to get bigger. But there is a part of me that thinks it could be good in the long term because with a salary cap becomes such a distinct difference between the numbers we're going to see offered to free agents that I think free agency will go faster. I think free
Mm,
agency will be less of a and that increases parity. Like that's how the NFL, part of the way that the NFL has such good parity, and how there have been so many different Super Bowl champions and then AFC and NFC championship attendees, and how division champions change all the time, and one draft pick away from being into the mix of everything. It's still a little different because player development's different in baseball. But if we start, you know, leveling the playing field of what every team could offer, and you start having to plan your roster years and years down the road in terms of how much salary cap do we have available, which free agent is going to be available in 2 years when we have all this dead money leave us, things like that, like the NFL does, you're going to see parity throughout the league to a bigger extent than we've seen it in recent years. I mean, we have a back-to-back World Series champion for the first time since the 90s. We had the perennial threat of the Dodgers just going out there and winning every single baseball game they play. And you can, the part that bothers me is that you can see there were at least two significant franchises that really seem like they waited for one offseason early because they know that the rules are going to significantly change this year. And that goes for the Yankees and that goes for the Phillies. Both those teams are basically running back the same roster they had last year because they were competitive. I had a chance on paper. Some of them have injuries that are going to resolve themselves and things like that. They may be more competitive than they were last year. But when you see teams with the biggest pocketbooks in the league, like the Yankees and like the Phillies, standing pat, I think that's a big indicator to how the owners truly believe that this offseason is going to go and how this negotiation is going to go. And if that's the lens you look at it, then maybe the Tony Clark stepping down, which it's a firing, right? Like we're not under any disillusionment.
yeah.
He was kicked out by the people that he works for. Um, I think that when you look at it through that lens, it looks like a kind of a panic move, and I think the owners are kind of banging on the table after this one.
Well, we'll see how it plays out, Parker. This won't be the last conversation, certainly, we have about these labor negotiations. But you tell us in the comments, if the owners push a cap, which we think they will, what's the one thing that the players must hold the line on? Make sure you're subscribing to Rally Cap here on YouTube and keep following our labor conversations.